Hi there, everyone. I hope that you're all well, and welcome back to another edition of the Prayer Warrior Sisterhood devotional channel. So we are on the road to discovering some more interesting women from the Bible. If you've been following, you would know that I've been doing some takes on some women, mostly women that is not that so well known in the Bible, because I found it very fascinating. A lot of times we overlook these women that sometimes don't seem like they are righteous, but in their ways and their faith and their courage, in trusting God, it's just so fascinating. And sometimes these stories are not told fully. And I just wanted to have some more understanding of these women and these stories and learn from that. So I am really happy and excited to be sharing that with you. So today, one of those women that we're looking at that we don't necessarily see as the righteous, and we don't really read so much about her. I know we would get to know these women sometimes just by chance, or sometimes they'll use them as an example of not to be like that. But I think the story goes much more deeper. And one of those women was Tamar. So if you want to know more about Tamar, you'll find the story in Genesis 38. So the heading of Genesis 38 is actually Judah and Tamar. So we're not going to be focusing too much on Judah as much as with Tamar. But just to give you a short background about who Judah was. Judah, as you know, was one of the brothers that threw sold Joseph off. Joseph the dreamer, who became one of the greatest leaders that helped these brothers in return, after, them deceiving their father, first of all, and also for almost killing their brother. What was interesting about Judah was actually the one that said to his brothers, do not kill him. Let's use a goat. And we slaughter the goat, and then we pretend that he's dead. We tell our father he's dead. And that's just the story, and you know the rest. Which is kind of fascinating. Later, I'll tell you why this part is actually poetic justice in a way. Anyway, moving on to Tamar. So Tamar was the wife of Judah's eldest son, as the Bible said, was a very wicked man. So he must have been very, very wicked and very bad for God then to decide, no, he's not going to be part of the story. And God said no, he died because he's such a wicked man. The Bible said that. And then there was his second born. So what happened back then was usually when the son or the elder son dies, the wife gets passed on to the next son. And the next son was Onan. So Onan, what happened with Onan was, in those days, what would happen if you had a child with your late brother's wife? That child, even though biologically it's your child, it was seen as your brother's child, and he was not going to have that. And once again, being very disobedient in what he did, God did not saw that as disrespect, and God also decided to end his life. Obviously, there might have been more to the story, we don't know, but yeah, they must have been really wicked people. But then again, their father also didn't really come from a righteous history. Anyway, moving on. So there was one brother left, Shelah. Now, Shelah, obviously, he was a bit younger. He was the youngest. And at that time, Judah probably felt, no, he's too young. And besides that, he probably thought he started becoming suspicious and he told Tamar, no, let's just wait. You can come live there by me. But yeah. And further on, I think he already made up his mind. He was not going to give his only son to Tamar. So Tamar, knowing this, as women we do, we read between the lines. We don't need people. We've got that intuition. God gave us just that intuition of knowing things. And she knew in her hearts of hearts that Judah was not going to give her son. She had to make a plan. So this is where the part where you ask yourself, was Tamar a scandalous deceiver or was she a smart survivor? So this I'm going to leave to you to decide, because it really made me think about this whole situation. So Tamar decided, she obviously knowing what type of man Judah was, she decided she's going to cook up a plan that will, in a way, what I thought it was kind of genius in a way. I don't know how she got away with it, though. In today's day, I don't know how you're going to get away with that. But obviously, those are different times. She took off, the word said she took off her grieving clothes. Obviously, the wife she was still grieving all these years. Can you imagine? She took off those clothes and she put on other clothes. She covered her face and she pretended to be a prostitute. And so she went to the place where she knew where Judah and Shelah was going to come past. And knowing, obviously, her father-in-law, she knew he would see her. Obviously, he had a weakness for women. And he asked to be, if he could sleep with her. And she said yes, but she asked him, what you going to give me? And it was negotiated. He said to her, he will give her a goat. And she said, sure, you can give me a goat, but I want almost like a deposit for that, or insurance that I'm going to get the goat. So she was strategic about the way she went about this. It wasn't just because, just think about it. She could have just said, okay, no, it's fine, trust you and do that, whatever. But she was it was a very well thought of plan. Because what happens next? She asked him for three things. So the three things that she asked him was, I know it was a ring, and the other one was a signet, a ring, and what was the other thing? A cord. So those was three things that was almost like to identify him. That was something that was very precious to Judah, and that will identify him as it's his stuff. Then she knew he would come back for it. So she used that plan. They were intimate, they slept together, and he left. And so anyway, the time passed by. She fell pregnant. And I just think it's just so amazing how she just fell pregnant just like that. Once, boof, it happened. So it tells me kind of like it had to happen that way in a way. I'm not saying it was God's will. I'm not saying that. But yeah, we'll get to that now. So she fell pregnant and they heard about it, and someone came to tell him, she's pregnant. And what he did was, being the self-righteous person that he was, he then said, yes, go fetch her and have her burnt, and brilliant. As she came, they came to fetch her. She said, look, the man that gave me this stuff, the signet, the ring, the cord, this, let the person know that this is the person who made me pregnant. And when they took it to Judah, his words were, then Judah identified them. He identified the items, and he said, she is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah. And he did not know her again. Or in other translations, he didn't sleep with her again. So he kind of like just cut her off, and, he admitted his guilt. And that was the story. And then Tamar went and she had twins. Two boys. And that was big. For women to bear sons was a big thing, because it's almost like women were reliant on men, and that back that day it was very important for you to bear sons. And it was just amazing how God blessed her with two sons, not just one. And I went to go think about it, because in the Bible beautifully described the whole birth process, and then I asked myself, why would they do that? And it left me with a thought that I thought that there's a reason why they wrote the whole how it happened and what happened, because I think it invites you to open to think about it, what the symbolism behind it is as well. Just gonna read that last part for you. um, when the time of labor came, there were twins in her womb. And when she was in labor, one put out his hand, and the midwife took and tied a scarlet thread on his hand, saying, "This one came out first." But as he drew his hand back, behold, the brother came out. And she said, "What a breach you have made for yourself." Therefore, his name was called Perez, after his brother came out with a scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was called Zerah. And I went to go actually see what the meaning of these names were. So Perez, Zerah, who came out first and we had the scarlet dingus, um, his name means brilliance or brightness. And Perez's name, who the second one that came out first, was supposed to be second, but he came out first. His name literally meant breaching in front of, or to burst forth. And I thought that was so poetic and so beautiful, because I saw it symbolically as to Tamar, who basically came forth. She came forth, she breached forth. And in something, a situation that was so dark, life came, brightness came, and something good came from it. They call it even brilliance, and so brilliance is something good. So the goodness of that came. So just with us as well, sometimes we find ourselves in a situation that we had to do things that we're not really proud of, but God saw us through, because I think God looks at the heart. I'm not saying that God condones things that is not good, because I mean, she did deceive Judah in a way, and I mean that is not that is a sin. But I think beyond that, God saw her innocence and a desperation. And for me, that is being a survivor. You do what you gotta do, and through that, God could bless her. And I mean, it took a lot of courage to do what she did. Maybe that was, I mean, who wants to sleep with an old man who is your father now? I mean, that is incest. I mean, I don't think she was that type of person. Maybe, I mean, they don't elaborate so much. It's a pity they don't elaborate much about the character, but I don't can just imagine for any woman to, to endure that. But she had to, because she had to survive. She had to bring forth children, and God blessed her. Not once, twice, with two sons. And you know what is so the most amazing thing about this whole story was that Tamar was, if you go to the book of Ruth, yeah, she is, her part is part of Jesus's genealogy. She is part of the genealogy of King David, and that is direct line of genealogy of Jesus. So someone that, I mean, that's for itself speaks a lot. So she couldn't have been that bad. Jesus uses us in so many ways. We sometimes think we're not good enough, but he doesn't judge us on what we did. He looks at our hearts. And that's just amazing.